In the world of comprehensive martial arts, there is no such thing as a chaotic word. The Eastern invincible sword god Xiaofeng is in the Villain's Valley, with no clear winner. Ximen Chuixue was obsessed with killing 15 swords and even gave up the battle at the top of the Forbidden City. Yuan Chengzhi came from the east, intending to discuss with Yue Buqun, who is the authentic sect of Mount Hua. Zhang Sanfeng never met Guo Xiang, nor did he regret it for 100 years. Because Guo Xiang had not yet been born, the great hero of Liaodong, Huidao, fled from afar. While the black stone assassin, Xiu, and the happy forest's Meng Xinghuan pursued him relentlessly, Yan 13, known as Sword Demon, made an appointment to fight against Dugu and sought defeat at Fenglingdu. The Beggar's sect is divided, with Xiaofeng to the west and Hongqi to the east, and the dragon subduing Divine Palm. Who is called the Supreme, Yanmen Iron Ridge, with weak soldiers. Guo Huang and his wife jointly defend the isolated city, Kunlun Liang Shao, leading the foreign race, with iron hooves clanging and destroying the city. Xu Jinping was born in such a chaotic era. He looked at everything in confusion and realized that as the protagonist, he had no cheats. Since that's the case, if you want to become stronger, you must be patient and cautious and not take the ordinary path. Everything starts with the method of attracting stars. Keywords of the novel. Wu World Magical Dao Supreme No Pop-ups. Wu World Magical Dao Supreme TXT Complete Collection Download. Wu World Magical Dao Supreme Latest Chapter Reading. Chapter 1. Jiangnan Meizhuang. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1 Jiangnan Meizhuang Daming Jiangnan, West Lake Meizhuang. Xu Jinping disguised himself as a servant in the outer courtyard and concealed himself here for several months. Today is the first day of the Lunar New Year, and there will be a gathering every 15th day. The West Lake Plum Blossom Village is located in a remote area. Every month, the village owner, Huang Zhonggong, leads many people to go out to purchase on these 2 days, which is also the most relaxed time for the Plum Blossom Village. Xu Jinping quietly arrived at the inner courtyard, hiding in the corner of the rockery, peering into everything that happened here. He knew that there was a water prison below this manor, where a person was imprisoned. The former leader of the demon cult, Ren Wuxing. And Xu Jinping has been lurking here for several months, bowing down as a servant and willing to endure, just to save Ren Wuxing and obtain his star-absorbing technique engraved on the iron plate of the water prison. Xu Jinping is not a person from this realm, but an ordinary person from the 21st century on Earth who accidentally traveled here. As an orphan in childhood, he was adopted as a disciple by Master Fang Yin of the northern Shaolin of the Great Ming Dynasty, with the Dharma name Jueming. Originally, he grew up practicing martial arts like an ordinary Shaolin monk until 4 years ago when Master Fang was killed while wandering the martial arts world. The culprit is still unknown. Since then, Fang Yin's disciples have lost their master and can only be transferred to other elders. As the stepmother's son, no one cares. Not only is no one concerned, but they are also repeatedly bullied. The progress of martial arts practice is always intentionally delayed, and even the key moves are always intentionally or unintentionally blocked from practice. Whenever there is a sparring, one will inevitably become a target for excellent martial monks, and will be beaten to the point of being almost powerless to fight back. Being often assigned miscellaneous tasks before meals results in having to eat leftovers from others. Sleeping in a big bunk must be crowded in the middle, making it difficult to even turn over. Even after reaching adulthood, accompanying a teacher in the martial arts world must also be acting as a vanguard, doing the most dangerous and difficult things. Many of his fellow disciples have already died in the martial arts world, and Xu Jinping naturally felt a strong sense of crisis. He knew that if he continued, his fate would only be as tragic as other disciples. And this world is simply chaotic and outrageous to the point of being beyond measure. This is a world of martial arts, where multiple dynasties and ethnic groups coexist, with endless wars and turmoil in the martial arts world. Even if Xu Jinping wanted to retire and become an ordinary citizen, he would still have to face more oppression from the government and local gangs. The only way to survive and live better is to constantly improve one's strength and reach the top position. Su Jinping traveled here without any cheating or special qualifications, and after his master's death, he was often oppressed by his fellow disciples. Even if one practices martial arts very diligently, even if they sweep and do odd jobs, they are constantly practicing external skills, and their level of achievement is only that of elite disciples who have broken through the wooden alley and bronze man formation. Even so, he was still envied by his peers, repeatedly excluded, and suppressed by his elders, unable to learn any of the 70.2 unique skills. It's simply a pipe dream to reach the level of a top expert through hard work. So he could only take risks. Thinking of the abbot of Shaolin Temple named Fangzheng, Su Jinping knew that the stories of the great Ming dynasty and the smiling and proud Jianghu would occupy a large part. And in this world, there are only two opportunities that he can easily obtain. One is the exorcism sword technique, and the other is the star absorption technique. The difficulty and risk of obtaining the evil repeating sword technique are the lowest, but the cost of cultivation is the highest. Su Jinping is not interested. The method of absorbing stars has great drawbacks and is not easy to obtain, but currently it is the most beneficial for Su Jinping. So he had already prepared for it, using the excuse of visiting the southern Shaolin to learn martial arts, and left the mountain gate early. Then, he searched for skilled craftsmen to make a steel wire saw, which could easily cut off even the thick and fine steel in his arms. Then he put on a wig and took advantage of the recruitment opportunity in Meizhuang to recruit and quietly lurk, actually observing the movements of everyone in the village. Now that we have already understood the behavior patterns of everyone in the village, it is time to take formal action. Today, Huang Zhonggong, the head of the large village, led Ding Jian and others to go out and buy the one-character electric sword. There were only 3 village heads left in the village. Haibaizi, Tubaiwang, and Dankingsheng. Bald Pen Wang and Dankingsheng have a close understanding of each other, often studying together. However, Haihizi was extremely cunning. Through these months of observation, Su Jinping knew that Haihizi would definitely try to sneak into the master's room to visit the people imprisoned in the dungeon while he was out. Therefore, Su Jinping paid extra attention to black and white, which is the key to his action this time. Haihizi first found the bald man and Dankingsheng, and somehow lured them out of the room and took them to a flower garden in the outer courtyard. These 2 people started drawing and writing outside, and Haihizi calmly returned and entered their room again, stealing 2 keys. Then he prepared a basket of food boxes and entered Huang Zhonggong's room with a sneer on his face, quietly closing the door. Su Jinping hid in the rockery and silently counted the time. After 500 breaths, he quietly emerged and observed the surroundings before quickly entering the room of the Grand Master Huang Zhonggong, closing the door once again. As expected, the secret passage under the bed has been opened and cannot be closed from the inside. Su Jinping first tied cotton cloth around his feet to prevent abnormal noises when stepping on the ground, and then checked the equipment he carried with him. His martial arts skills are limited, and he needs to rely on poisoned hidden weapons and smoke to act. After putting these things in the most convenient position, he can quietly infiltrate. At this moment, Haihizi was at the dog-hole position at the entrance of the water prison, persuading me with flattery in his voice. Senior Ren. I have come to see you again. Have you considered the things mentioned last month? If you are willing to accept the younger generation as your disciple and pass on their star-sucking skills, this blue wine and delicious food will be the younger generation's meeting gift. When the younger generation learns the star-absorbing technique, they will surely release you, Master, from the water prison. Then, our master and disciple will work together to kill the Black Cliff and seek revenge against Dongfang Bubi. It will be a pleasure. As he spoke, he opened up the delicious wine and food in blue china, and a tempting aroma of wine and meat drifted into the prison. The prison environment is humid and stuffy, with a variety of putrid odors. Ren Wuxing's daily diet is often harsh, usually only having plain water and rice, and only having vegetables and eggs during festivals. If it weren't for his deep internal strength, he could improve his physical condition on his own, otherwise he would have died here after being imprisoned for more than 10 years. Upon smelling the aroma of these wine and meat, Ren Wuxing couldn't help but swallow his saliva, but still turned his back to the dog hole, making a cold laugh without answering. Haihizi was obviously very impatient and thought to himself, "Old man, toast, don't eat, fine wine. You won't get any oil or water in the next month. I'll give you clean water and white rice every day, and I'll starve you a few meals to see how long you can hold on." His tone remained obsequious, and he even took a sip of the fine wine and smiled, saying, "This is the best flower carving in Shaoxing. How pure the fragrance is. As long as you agree, I will have it every day in the future. Get out of here. Don't bother me with my cleanliness, you dog." Haihizi's face was gloomy, and he was all focused on Ren Wuxing, not noticing that there was already someone standing 10 steps behind him. The person took out the smoke and gently threw it at his feet, but he still felt nothing. Until the smoke rose and he took a breath, he smelled something wrong and then turned around in shock. But in the dark environment, suddenly 7 or 8 poisonous needles stained with ink flew towards me. In this environment, it is impossible to see the direction of these poisonous needles clearly with your eyes. Ordinary martial arts experts may be ambushed unconsciously. Haihizi is also proficient in hidden weapons, so his hearing is extremely strong. Although the poisonous needle is small, it cannot conceal his perception. His face changed dramatically, he used his internal strength all over, slapped him horizontally, causing a strong wind to blow his face. Suddenly, he scraped all 7 or 8 poisonous needles onto one side of the wall, sweating profusely and shouting, "Who is that?" But in the next moment, I felt my body weak and weak. I was startled just now, and my breathing suddenly became rapid. I took several strong breaths of misty smoke, and the medicine immediately softened and collapsed to the ground. The person in the darkness still walked gently without making any sound. Black and White quietly touched a chess piece with one hand, which was his only chance to turn defeat into victory. However, he was too weak at this moment to throw far, and had to wait for the person to approach within 5 steps before he had a chance to turn defeat into victory. So he pretended to faint, lay motionless, but in fact bit through his tongue, maintaining his final energy in observing the other person. But only seeing the person approaching a distance of 7 steps, he fumbled for a few black poisonous needles from his sleeve. Then, in the despairing gaze of Haihizi, at this distance, he nailed the poisonous needle to several important holes on his head from afar. The venom instantly entered his mind, and Black and White's final thought was, "Who the hell is this person? He's so cunning and cautious, I don't even have a chance." End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Star Attraction Method. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2 Star Attraction Method. Black and White Sun drank hatred on the spot, unable to close his eyes in death. Su Jinping's gaze became even more profound, as his left and right hands collided and continued to hit the walls and floors, making a sound. Then he pinched his throat and imitated the voice of Haihizi. "Dog thief. Who sent you here? Are you here to save Ren Wuxing?" Upon hearing this commotion in the water prison, Ren Wuxing suddenly stood up and turned his head to stare at the dog hole. However, even with his internal strength, he couldn't see what was happening there clearly. His whole body trembled inexplicably, filled with anticipation and excitement. "But Brother Xiang! Brother Xiang, have you come yet?" The fight on the other side of the dog hole became even more intense, and only Black and White shouted in panic, "Despicable and shameless! How dare you use poison?" Later, a sound of running gradually faded away, followed by the sound of chasing and retracting. Immediately after, a breathless voice said, "Master Ren, the Black and White Sun's Xiantian finger is a bit powerful, allowing him to buy time and escape a servant. Time is running out, I believe the people from Meizhuang will be killed in a while. Please continue with this and quickly cut off the iron rope." I believe that with your martial arts skills as the sect leader, you can escape. I will meet you outside Meizhuang. As soon as I heard it, it was a young and unfamiliar voice, not Xiang Wentian. Moreover, if it were Xiang Wentian, it would have been impossible for him to have been fighting black and white for so long and even using poison. He saw a roll of something thrown from the dog hole, quickly took it in his hand, opened it up, and was filled with excitement. It was a steel wire saw. Good brother, wait for me. When I come out and kill all the henchmen of the Eastern Invincible Plum Blossom Village, I will definitely use them for you. Then, hearing the voice of the person leaving, he thought to himself, he's right. Since someone has escaped to report, I'm afraid someone will come down soon. I must break free from the shackles as soon as possible. With those few prison guards, it's impossible to stop me. Su Jingping left the secret passage and waited for a moment at the door. The reason why he deliberately acted in such a play just now was to make Ren Wuxing feel that time was tight and he had to get rid of it as soon as possible. Only then did he not think of immediately destroying the star-absorbing technique secret script engraved on the iron plate. Otherwise, Su Jingping's plans over the past few months will be completely ruined, and he is unwilling to do things that harm others and are not beneficial to himself. Fingers pinching the time, he immediately rushed out of Huang Zhonggong's room and shouted, Master Haihizi has released the demon from the prison. Everyone, come and help. After shouting, quickly burrow into the crevice of the rockery and hide. This throat immediately woke up the bald man and Dankingsheng who were still immersed in calligraphy and painting. The two of them were terrified and immediately called out to everyone. They rushed frantically into Huang Zhonggong's room and almost fainted on the spot when they saw the secret passage open. Dankingsheng called out and everyone rushed down the secret passage. There were many iron ropes tied to Ren Wuxing's body. He used a wire saw to first cut open the several ropes connected to the wall, which increased the activity space. Then, he cut off the one that was connected to his feet, and his likeness skills were no longer hindered. At this moment, I heard a commotion coming from the secret passage. I immediately flew towards the exit and caught a glimpse of Black Dot and Dot White's body. He was extremely resentful of this person. Even if he died, he wouldn't let go and stomped on his spine, crushing his waist and spine. Then he noticed the food and drinks on the ground, his eyes turned green, he picked up the flour carving, grabbed the roasted chicken, and stood in place like a wild beast, feasting and drinking. Dankingsheng and others rushed over and caught a glimpse of this scene. Ren Wuxing was disheveled, with messy beard and ragged clothes. He was covered in iron ropes, his mouth was stained with oil and smell, and he had a fierce smile on his face. His eyes were filled with a fierce aura. Quickly, a brutal massacre broke out in the narrow secret passage. After a moment, Ren Wuxing rushed out covered in blood and jumped onto the top of the rockery, like a raging dragon rising out of the abyss. He roared from the sky, his voice shaking all directions, and could be heard from 10 miles away. Huang Zhonggong, who was shopping outside, heard the roar and his expression changed. He immediately returned with everyone. Ren Wuxing saw that there were no other living beings nearby, so he went outside to search for Huang Zhonggong and others, and started sawing off the other iron ropes wrapped around his body. Now, no one can stop him. Su Jingping calmly crawled out of the rockery, pulling out his ears and rushing into the secret passage. The roar of letting me go just now made Su Jingping's tinnitus not disappear, but he didn't care so much. He knew that whether it was Ren Wuxing or Huang Zhonggong, they would definitely return soon. There wasn't much time, we had to hurry. Entering the secret passage and looking at the incomplete corpses on the ground, Su Jingping couldn't help but change his expression. He quickly burrowed into the iron prison, where the light was dark and he couldn't see clearly, but with a touch of his hand, he did indeed find the text on the iron plate. Su Jingping was ecstatic and calmly took out the prepared cinnabar, evenly spreading it on every area with text on the iron plate. Then use parchment paper to lay and press on the iron plate one by one, and then print the text. After finishing these, he wiped away all the traces of cinnabar and quickly put away the fruits of his labor, heading out of the secret passage. At this moment, Ren Wuxing had noticed that Huang Zhonggong and others were returning and fighting with them outside, which delayed some time. Su Jingping crawled out of the secret passage and hid back inside the rockery, quietly cat. However, in a moment, a strong smell of blood came and Ren Wuxing finished killing all the prison guards, finally remembering what was left behind at the bottom of the West Lake prison. He was free, but of course he would not keep his martial arts achievements. After returning to prison, he scraped the words on the iron plate clean with an iron rope before coming out again. Then he set fires everywhere in the village to vent the suffering of over a decade. The fire spread together and almost burned Su Jingping to death inside. Fortunately, it was not far from West Lake and brought water from West Lake. Su Jingping swam out along the waterway of the village and arrived at a deserted wilderness. Looking at the burning West Lake plum blossom village behind him, Su Jingping's expression was indifferent. Today, dozens of people in Meizhuang died at the hands of Ren Wuxing, but in fact, they were all the result of Su Jingping's plan. But he didn't feel any guilt at all. The world is like this. If he doesn't find ways to become stronger, one day, his fate will be the same. He brought his secret script to a cave in the wilderness, which was the safe house he had prepared for a long time, absolutely remote and safe. Here, he lit the prepared torch, unfolded the parchment on the stone table, and recognized it against the light. Thanks to thorough preparation and perfect action, the text on it is very clear. Although it is all mirrored reverse characters, it does not hinder recognition. Just write it down one by one with reference. Su Jingping spent the whole night recording all the thousands of words of the star-absorbing technique, which also contained many free-spirited cultivation experiences, which were even more helpful. Looking at the complete version of the star-absorbing technique, Su Jingping was overjoyed. Although the star-absorbing technique has great drawbacks, it can also be considered one of the top martial arts, which is of extraordinary help to someone like him who lacks resources and connections. So he immediately started practicing. To practice the star-absorbing technique, you need to first dissipate all your internal skills to make the dantian constant like an empty valley. Su Jingping practiced martial arts at the age of 8 and has only been there for 10 years. His cultivation level is shallow, and Shaolin martial arts enter from the outside. In the early stage, he demonstrated the effectiveness of external skills, but his internal strength is not deep, so it is not a pity to disperse it. He spent more than 10 days officially cultivating the star-absorbing technique, but now the elixir field is empty and there is no more internal power available. Therefore, he did not immediately go down the mountain, but only bought enough daily necessities and carried them to the cave before continuing to cultivate Shaolin martial arts in the cave. The reason why I still practice Shaolin martial arts is because Shaolin martial arts are widely spread. In this world of martial arts, the main temple of Shaolin Temple is located in the Tang dynasty, while other countries have branch temples. There are also 2 more temples in the Ming dynasty, north and south. The basic martial arts of Shaolin have always been taught without distinction. As long as one is willing to learn, they will be generously taught in the temple. There are very few in the martial arts world who have not practiced Shaolin martial arts. Especially for beginner-level martial arts practitioners, the Dharma Heart Sutra is a guiding martial arts technique that involves entering from the outside. Moreover, after practicing it, it does not hinder the conversion to other internal mental techniques in the future, with strong compatibility. Su Jingping still prioritizes Shaolin internal skills because in the future, if he uses the star-absorbing technique to absorb other people's internal forces, there will be many martial artists with the same type of internal skill, so he will not have as much concern about absorbing it. It can make Shaolin's internal skills more powerful and also facilitate the suppression and absorption of other exotic true qi. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Past Enmities and Resentments. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Past enmities and resentments. Su Jingping seemed to have returned to the time when he first practiced martial arts, and his master, Master Fang Yin, personally guided him in every movement and breathing rhythm. The kindness of the sect is vividly remembered, but unfortunately it has already passed away. After his master's death, Su Jingping and his fellow disciples were repeatedly bullied, and their hearts had long been tempered with coldness and malice. Not having enough strength and being bullied for a while doesn't mean you have to endure it for a lifetime. He always immediately fought back when he had the opportunity, even without learning any superior martial arts. He still penetrated the wooden lane, the bronze man formation, and reached the 7th rank of the Zhou generation. He is also becoming increasingly excluded, resentful, and marginalized. The Shaolin family has a great cause, and there is no elder council that pays attention to him as an unknown little martial monk. Su Jinping's eyes flashed, and he practiced his fist in his hands. Arhat fist was practiced together with the Dharma Heart Sutra, which shocked the blood outside and filled the chi inside. Internal strength is slowly honed through high-intensity physical training and boxing. He is now entering the country faster than when he was at Shaolin Temple, because he has decided to defect from Shaolin. Naturally, he can eat meat recklessly to make up for the deficit in cultivating external skills. The resources of Shaolin Temple are limited, and various rules and regulations prohibit the consumption of meat and fish. The physical deficits caused by the disciples' daily practice of internal and external skills are often replenished with medicine. But that is basically limited to the most valued disciples under the master's sect, such as Su Jingping, who is a dependent disciple and never wants to get involved. They can only eat more beans to replace meat and make up for their health, but of course, beans are not as easy to digest and absorb as meat. Some martial monks, even if they want to work hard, cannot absorb all the nutrients from beans, and their bodies can only gradually become depleted. They can only slow down their practice pace, fall behind step by step, and become marginalized groups. Su Jinping's remedy in the temple is to eat insects. Grasshoppers, ant eggs, spiders, centipedes, scorpions, and even cockroaches, among other things that others dare not touch. He bravely tried to clean them up and eat them. These can also provide sufficient nutrition and protein to replace the body's deficit. He actually wants to be like other martial monks, taking advantage of the opportunity to go down the mountain to do things, often stealing meat and fish, or letting the shopkeeper add meat and oil when eating noodles, which can also be considered a method. But he can't do it. His behavior of working too hard is quite enviable, with many eyes fixed on him in the dark. If he dares to engage in meat and violate temple rules, he will immediately report it, be punished, and even be expelled from the mountain gate. It is this kind of hardship that has made him an excellent disciple of the Zhou generation step by step, but he still cannot receive the attention of the temple and cannot obtain the 70.2 unique skills. This time, he is no longer willing to follow the same path and endure the same hardships. This world cannot change his destiny through hard work. Let's argue. A desperate struggle. Only then can we strive for a world. Even if it requires stepping on countless bones, as long as the road is ahead and sacrificing many people, he is willing to do anything. More than 5 months later, he has practiced Arhat boxing more deeply than before. I'm afraid no one in his generation knows more about the actual combat methods of Arhat boxing than he does. At the same time, he also developed an internal power equivalent to the 5 years before the dispersion of martial arts, which is not worth it. However, with a few more months of cultivation, he can fully recover his internal skills within 10 years. But he can no longer continue. Practicing day and night for 5 months consumes resources greatly. He often needs to purchase sufficient meat and medicinal herbs, and he still remembers the prescriptions of Shaolin Temple that nourish qi and strengthen blood. Just these things, over 70 taels of silver is enough for such a long time. The Ming dynasty implemented a silver standard system, with a considerable amount of silver circulating and relatively low value. The living cost of ordinary households for food, housing, and clothing is about 10 taels of silver per year. 70 taels of silver is equivalent to 7 years of use by an ordinary family, so practicing martial arts is really expensive, and even the great cause of the Shaolin family cannot care about all the martial monks. Most of Su Jinping's money was stolen from the Westlake Plum Blossom Village, but unfortunately, the Plum Blossom Village was burned down due to our violent behavior. Otherwise, Su Jinping would have taken more money with him. At present, there is no other way but to go down the mountain and consider how to make money, and then consider where to find more advanced martial arts cultivation. At this time, he had not had his hair cut or shaved for almost a year, and his face was covered with a beard and sideburns. Looking at the water, he looked like a wild man. This happened to help him conceal his identity and prevent being recognized by Shaolin disciples, so he didn't plan to shave anymore. He casually found a straw rope and wrapped it around his hair, like a traveler named Wu Song, carrying his luggage down the mountain. Today happens to be 15, it's market day. Su Jinping went down the mountain to the market. He sat on the tea stand and ate mantou with a few loose copper coins left on his body. He was also thinking about where to go next. At this moment, 7 or 8 monks came up from the table opposite him and sat at 2 tables. Su Jinping looked away quietly, his eyes fixed. He knew all these people and was a disciple of Mang Arhat Fangchen. Since the death of his master Fang Yin, he has been assigned to Fang Chen's command. This Mang Arhat's nickname is not wrong at all. He is very irritable. He is impatient when teaching martial arts. He likes to yell and shout. Which disciple can't understand the main points and often adds fists and feet? There is no disciple under his sect who has not been beaten to the point of being bruised all over, and followers like Su Jinping are even more infuriating. Su Jinping would rather sneak a peek at other martial monks practicing martial arts or seek advice through bribery than seek advice from this master Fang Chen. His disciples under him also inherited his irritable temper, and they clashed with each other at any word they said. For years ago, when they were first assigned to his subordinates, they learned the martial arts of these disciples. The current leading monk is also Fang Chen's first disciple Jiue, who is 5 years older than himself and has a deeper cultivation. This person is like Fang Chen's biological child, with a strong physique, muscular like iron, and a beard on his face, resembling a butcher more than a monk. Of course, what impressed Su Jinping the most about him was his martial arts skills. As the top expert under Fang Chen's sect, he was an outstanding figure even among the Zhu generation in Shaolin. A year ago, when he left the Mountain Gate, there was a Mountain Gate competition, and this person won 3rd place. Su Jinping ranked 7th and was defeated by this person. But he didn't feel that he was much weaker than Zhu Hui. If he were to say that he was inferior, it was only because the opponent had practiced one of the 70.2 unique skills, the Great Diamond Finger, and he had not practiced any superior martial arts. In theory, as long as Shaolin disciples can pass the tests of Wooden Alley and Bronze Man formation, they are eligible to receive one of the 70.2 unique skills. Su Jinping, a group of disciples without a master, would not be fought for by anyone. There is injustice everywhere in this world, and Su Jinping has already seen through it. At present, he just quietly lowers his head and pretends not to know these Shaolin disciples. They gathered together, but were discussing what is happening in the world today. Let me return to the martial arts world. I heard that I have controlled many people with the 3-corpse brain divine pill. It seems like I want to divide the demon cult into 2 parts. Ren Wuxing is also a first-class demon in the world. It seems that there was another reason for the former Zen master. He should have had a deep hatred with Dongfang Bubi, but he didn't see him and directly hit the Blackwood Cliff. Dongfang Bubi is one of the top experts today, who once dueled with the sword god Xiaofeng, but the outcome is unknown. Although Ren Wuxing is a top expert, he should not be able to catch up with Dongfang Bubi. With this self-awareness, he has been hesitant to climb the Black Cliff. I heard that this incident has alarmed the 5 Sacred Sword sect. Left Cold Zen intends to form an alliance on Mount Song to discuss how to deal with this matter. But there seems to be another reason for Lu Xingfeng's invitation from the Hengshan sect to invite all the heroes of the world to wash their hands. Su Jingping listened carefully and also gained a lot of information. He is preparing to leave. Suddenly, a Shaolin disciple pointed at Su Jingping from behind and said, "Senior brother Jiahue, do you think this beggar looks familiar to you?" Jiahue frowned and said, "Where are you looking familiar? Do you still remember Jueming? He hasn't returned to the temple for a year, and everyone thought he was dead." Jiahue immediately stood up, leaped forward, and jumped in front of Su Jingping, frowning and looking at him with a beard on his face. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Revenge. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Revenge, Jueming. It's indeed you. Jiahue grabbed Su Jingping's shoulder and immediately shouted loudly. A group of Shaolin monks gathered around, their mouths full of gossip. Su Jingping's heart remained calm, just silently watching the other person. Jiahue laughed heartily. He was one head taller than Su Jingping, and reached out to pull it off his head. "Oh. I thought it was a wig, but I didn't expect Jueming that you really grew your hair. Are you still vulgar? This is not in accordance with the rules of the temple." Su Jingping said in a very calm tone, "Junior brother went to Southern Shaolin 6 months ago to handle affairs, and encountered many things in the middle, but was unable to reach Southern Shaolin. Afterwards, I didn't expect the demon to emerge freely, and I encountered an internal struggle among the demons of the demon cult. My junior brother was also implicated and suffered serious injuries, struggling to survive on the brink of death. I have been recovering from my injuries until now, and I just came out of the mountains. I don't have time to take care of it." Jiahue sneered, "Do you think I'll believe your lies? Anyway, you're going down the mountain without returning, which greatly violates the rules of my Shaolin temple. I need to take you back this time so that my master can investigate and interrogate you. But I'll see if you still have the courage to lie." Su Jingping remained calm and said, "Junior brother happens to be returning to the mountain gate. Why don't we leave now?" Jiahue said, "You are now a sinner. I will lock your acupoints to prevent you from escaping." Su Jingping's eyes flashed with a murderous intent, but he let out a bitter smile and said, "Senior brother, why do you need to be like this? I have a limp in one leg and my Dantian internal skills have been disabled. I'm afraid I won't be able to practice martial arts in the future. With so many martial arts brothers watching, you can still be afraid of me running away." At the same time as speaking, he secretly used his true energy and charged downwards, quietly shaking his right knee to dislocate, causing the joints to be misaligned. This excruciating pain caused him to sweat profusely on his forehead and vest, but his expression remained calm, even able to maintain the bitter smile, but the killing intent in his heart became even stronger. At the same time, the dark energy absorbing star technique hides the true energy in the governor meridian deeper, leaving the Dantian empty. Upon hearing Su Jingping's words, the martial monks were all shocked. Jiahue disbelieved and pulled up his pants legs, only to see the misaligned joints and twisted muscles. With a beat in his heart, he couldn't help but think to himself. He was indeed seriously injured, and his leg was all broken. So without further touching, he only held on to Su Jingping's pulse and immediately realized that his Dantian was empty, without any true energy. Jiahue's rough face showed a hint of sympathy and he said to his companions, "Jiahue clearly lost all his internal skills. This is really... It seems that you didn't lie before, junior brother Jiahue, but..." He changed his tone and smiled grimly, "This matter still needs to be handed over to my master. You still have to follow us back to Shaolin. Along the way, you will be a guilty monk." He forcefully patted Su Jingping's shoulder, causing him to fall forward and tugging at his dislocated knee. The pain made his face look grim, but he still maintained a smile. The more intense the pain at this moment, the more ominous the opportunity for revenge will become. After a group of martial monks had eaten their fill, they carried Su Jingping northward. Su Jingping remembered that he wouldn't see any village or family for the next few dozen miles on the mountain road. He was waiting at night, waiting for these people to slack off, so he needed to endure it. On the way, due to Su Jingping pretending to lose his martial arts skills and become a useless person, people who used to disagree with him began to tease him like a doormat. A monk watched him limp as he walked, occasionally lightly kicking Su Jingping's dislocated knee. "Hey, junior brother Jueming, which hero broke your dog leg? When you were in the temple before, your leg skills were amazing. We practiced more martial arts than you, but we couldn't beat you. Now why are you all useless? Ha ha ha, can it be considered as Buddha's retribution?" Su Jingping had already recovered from the dislocation, but the swollen wound was still very painful. Every time he was touched, his body couldn't help but twitch. He maintained a submissive smile and said, "I used to offend my fellow martial brothers a lot. Now that I have seen the dangers of the martial arts world, I just want to be a laborer in Shaolin for the rest of my life, and be satisfied with having enough to eat every day." "Oh. Ha ha ha, Jueming, you used to work so hard, sleeping and eating with a heavy burden on your back, carrying water not only with a pointed wooden bucket, but also with iron needles tied to your arms and armpits, and using an iron broom to sweep the floor. You worked so hard in front of your master, I don't know how many times you've been beaten and scolded by your master, but now you just want to be a useless worker with peace of mind." A monk hooked Su Jingping's neck and said with a malicious smile, "Don't worry, the days ahead will be long. When you return to the temple and work as a laborer, our senior brothers will definitely protect you well and not let others bully you. After all, it's our fellow disciples who have to bully us to be closer. Do you think so?" Su Jingping lowered his head and chuckled twice, noticing that the sun was gradually moving westward towards dusk. Juehue wiped the sweat off his neck and said, "All right, it seems there won't be any villages around here. We'll camp in a nearby cave and bake some dry food to eat. We'll make our way tomorrow morning." A group of martial monks came to the cave and instructed Su Jingping to clean the ground and light 2 bonfires, then gathered around to chat on his own. Su Jingping sat at the entrance of the cave, and others were not afraid of him running away. After all, a cripple without martial arts skills, where could he run? After nightfall, the monks fell asleep and a monk came to the cave entrance to pour water, intentionally sprinkling it towards the position where Su Jingping was lying, with a mocking expression on his face. But in the next moment, he couldn't laugh anymore. Su Jingping, who had originally closed his eyes on the ground, suddenly opened his eyes and tripped with force. The monk who had just taken off his pants immediately fell to the ground. He was about to struggle in surprise, but Su Jingping had already pressed onto his back, pressing his knees against his back and covering his mouth with one hand. At the same time, the dantian was empty like a hollow valley, like a storm, turning into a spiral, generating an extremely powerful suction that flowed along Su Jingping's hand meridians. The martial monk's entire internal strength surged towards Su Jingping's palm meridians, leaving him completely powerless to struggle. His eyes were filled with fear, and he even wet the ground. He didn't know how this useless fellow suddenly became so powerful, and also possessed a strange evil skill that could absorb his internal strength. Not long after, his shallow internal strength was completely absorbed and his whole body was weak. Su Jingping easily twisted his neck and gently placed it on the ground. Although this monk's internal strength is shallow, it is of the same origin and quality as Su Jingping, without any exclusivity. It directly blends with the true qi in the governor vessel, which can be considered as an increase, reaching the level before the dispersion of martial arts. To prevent wild beasts, the monk arranged for someone to be on duty at night. The recent conflict at the entrance of the cave caused relatively little noise, and the monk inside, who was watching the bonfire on duty at night, did not notice anything. "I just noticed that my companion seemed to have not returned for a long time, so I walked towards the cave entrance in confusion." Quickly, he noticed his companion lying on the ground, feeling frightened and about to shout. At this moment, Su Jingping had appeared behind him, using heavy techniques to cover his mouth and lock his acupoints. He continued to use the star-absorbing technique, and after completing the task, he continued to twist his neck and throw it outside the cave. Then slowly walking into the cave, there were only 6 martial monks left, all still soundly asleep. Su Jinping's mouth curled up, and his face, covered in beard, looked like a demon about to seek revenge. He didn't immediately take action, but instead threw the hidden smoke into the campfire, took the antidote himself, and waited quietly for the smoke to take effect. After a while, the most skilled Jiangnan woke up and shouted, "Oh no! Someone is plotting, everyone be vigilant." He immediately wanted to get up, but was startled to feel his muscles flaccid. Although his brain was clear, he couldn't control his body movements. He wanted to get up, but his body only wriggled a little. A group of martial monks woke up in shock upon hearing the sound, realizing that they were powerless to move and turned pale with fear. People's frightened eyes gradually focused on a man who was baking mantu beside the campfire. The man had no distinction between beard and hair, and his clothes were shabby, just like a savage. He chewed loudly, not like chewing mantu, but like chewing flesh and blood. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Massacre. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Massacre. Su Jinping said, "Have you all woken up?" Jiangnan said, "Did you plot against us?" Assault. Su Jinping stood up and took 2 steps, pondered for a moment, then nodded. "It's indeed a conspiracy, there's nothing shameful about it." Jiangnan exclaimed in shock, "You haven't lost your martial arts skills and you're not lame either." "Well, my acting skills are pretty good, right?" The hearts of the monks were pounding with lightning, and they all felt a sense of impending disaster. Several of them thought of bullying Su Jinping this afternoon and immediately shouted for mercy. Jiangnan angrily said, "What are you begging for?" He endured it so much that he didn't take action until this moment, so naturally he didn't intend to let us go back alive. "Anyway, we're all going to die, so be tough." Su Jinping nodded slightly and said, "You are indeed very similar to Master Feng Chen, both of whom have such despicable bones and bad temper." Under the backlight of the campfire, Su Jinping's face was more ghostly than human. "Come one by one, queue up in order to meet the King of Hell." Jiangnan bit through his tongue, struggled desperately, and forcefully controlled his body muscles, barely sitting up for a while. "Dog thief, there's a way to give the monk an antidote. We fought a fair battle 1.1. You lost to me in a big competition last year, didn't you say I knew how to use the diamond finger, but you didn't achieve the 70.2 ultimate skill? Are you unwilling? The monk tells you that even if I don't use the powerful diamond finger, I can still kill you." Su Jinping squatted in front of him and nodded calmly, "I believe in a fair battle, you can kill me." Jiangnan originally intended to provoke Su Jinping with the method of provocation, causing him to lose his sanity and giving him a fair chance to fight. I didn't expect Su Jinping to be so calm, not caring about his tactics. I saw him sneer and say, "But why should I fight you fairly? You have all walked through the rivers and lakes, who would fight you fairly in the rivers and lakes? Walking in the martial arts world, laughing while standing, dying while lying down, you all lie down now, only I am standing." As he spoke, he reached out and patted Jianghui's shoulder, using the star-absorbing technique. The powerful suction crazily drew the true qi from Jianghui's Dan field towards himself. Jianghui was extremely frightened and shouted loudly, "My internal strength! My internal strength is being sucked out. What kind of evil skill is this? Jiangming. What kind of evil skill have you practiced? I must tell my master, even if you become a ghost, you must tell him in a dream to come and avenge us." Su Jinping smiled and said, "Okay, let's see if you can turn into a ghost and daydream. Oh, by the way, Shaolin is an important place for Buddhism. Do you think Buddha would allow you, such a lonely and wild ghost, to run wild?" Feeling the pure internal skills of Jianghui pouring into oneself, the other person's cultivation is already deeper than oneself. At present, they absorb all of it, even if it will consume about 30% in the middle, it is enough to make a great breakthrough in their internal skills. Not long after, Jiangnan Dantian was empty and completely sucked away. He also leaned weakly against the mountain wall, with a look of despair on his face. Su Jingping coldly slapped Jianghui's head and smashed it to pieces. Not bad. Jianghui's internal strength is really good, it has greatly improved me. Immediately, he looked at the other martial monks with a grim expression on his face and said, "It's your turn." As he spoke, he looked at one of them and said, "If you hadn't recognized me, perhaps there wouldn't have been today's calamity. I can't even distinguish my beard and hair clearly, so you can recognize me too. How deep do you really remember me?" As he spoke, he reached out his fingers and poked into his eyes, pulling, and his 2 huge eyeballs were completely gouged out. The monk screamed in pain and cried incessantly. Su Jingping stared at him with a fierce light in his eyes. A person who can remember themselves so clearly must have been secretly watching them, searching for opportunities to make mistakes, and then reporting them. Remembering these years of eating insects to make up for the deficit, Su Jingping's anger was about to erupt like a volcano in his chest. He didn't use his internal strength, just punched the opponent repeatedly until his fists were soaked in blood, and the opponent's head and body were completely deformed. Only then did he exhaust the opponent's internal strength and bombard them to death on the spot. Then he let out a long sigh and looked at the other monk who was still alive but dared not make a sound. "All right, I'll give you a good time and won't kill you." Speaking, after absorbing everyone's internal strength one by one, he killed them with all his palms here, and the entire cave was filled with blood. Blood will be emitted, and soon it will attract wild wolves. Su Jingping doesn't need to tidy up these corpses at all, nature will clean them up completely. He absorbed everyone's internal energy, and all of them were of the same origin and quality as himself. His internal energy naturally surged, just like practicing hard for 40 years. Although this kind of skill is strong, it is somewhat superficial. After all, among these martial monks, only one person, Zhu Hui, has a solid foundation, while others have relatively weak martial arts skills. The combined internal strength of 7 ordinary martial monks is equivalent to twice that of Jianghui, which is really nothing. Moreover, Su Jingping felt that if he continued to absorb the internal skills of monks at this level, the effect would not be too obvious. It was necessary to purify and refine the internal forces in the governor's meridian before considering absorbing the internal forces of stronger individuals, in order to become stronger and walk more steadily. Su Jingping searched the backpacks and bodies of the martial monks, of course not hoping to find the martial arts secrets, but some scattered silver coins, road guides, and books are still very useful. He packed all these things into his own package, and the amount of silver he found alone reached 100 taels, which was enough for him to use for a long time. Even with some precious medicinal herbs, it can be used, so there is no problem continuing to practice the Dharma Heart Sutra. The night was cold and the stars were cold. Su Jingping left with a bloody body. Shortly thereafter, howls of wolves came from the mountains after dawn. Su Jingping had returned to his official position, and with so much silver on his body, he once again had the idea of settling his internal skills for a period of time before wandering in the martial arts world. Su Jingping thought to himself, the Shaolin internal skill I currently master, which is the Dharma Heart Sutra, has limited potential. At most, after penetrating the 12 meridians, the cultivation effect will become worse and worse, and the potential will be exhausted after the age of 30. The unarmed skills include Arhat Fist, Long Fist 10-section brocade, dipping clothes and 18 drops, Iron Head skill and Paida skill. On the blade of the weapon are the Dharma sword technique, the eyebrow straightening staff, the 5 tigers chasing the wind blade, the 9-section whip, and the willow leaf dart. In addition, lightness skills are the most common techniques of lifting the vertical and gecko wall climbing. I have actually mastered quite a few martial arts, but none of them belong to the highest level of martial arts. Most of them are basic martial arts. The best Arhat Fist and 5 Tiger Wind Seeking Saber are only middle-level martial arts with limited potential. And although I can do all of them, I have no expert except Arhat boxing. Next, unless I acquire superior martial arts, I should specialize in one, so that I can still become a master. It's just internal skills, we still need to find some ways. If there's no way, we can only catch Shaolin disciples to make up for it. He was lost in thought, picking up the stick on the ground and walking, gesturing about the martial arts he had practiced, thinking about which one to specialize in. At the point where the wooden stick is waved, sometimes sword energy is shot out, and sometimes the blade flashes continuously. When encountering rocks on the roadside, one can easily smash them with a casual kick and punch. Even though his internal strength has been fleeting for 40 years, he is much stronger than second or third-rate figures in the martial arts world, at least at the level of Yu Canghai, the leader of the Qingqing sect. That's actually too early. Yu Canghai hasn't even broken through the 12 Xingjing, and he can now take control of one side. But in this world, the cultivation of martial arts is not limited to this. The foundation is built after birth, the innate return to the original state, the harmony between heaven and man, and the breaking of the void, totaling 4 great realms. To enter the innate world, it is necessary to connect the 12 meridians and then the 8 extraordinary meridians in order to have the opportunity to break through. From birth to heaven and humanity, one must also have access to the 9 orifices of the human body. After the 9 orifices return to life, one can reach heaven and humanity. It is even more difficult for heaven and humanity to break the void. It is necessary to practice martial arts until the anode generates yin, the cathode generates yang, the yang generates yin, and the yin generates yang. At least 2 times before breaking the death barrier can break the void. Going further, it is probably a realm like immortals, Buddhas, and demons, unimaginable, and without knowing if there is a path. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. The Integration of Buddha and Demon. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. The integration of Buddha and demon. At this moment, a commotion came from not far ahead, as if 2 groups of people and horses were fighting each other. Su Jingping frowned and glanced, only to see a group of bandits surrounding a convoy of escorts who were robbing and killing. The one-eyed leader among the bandits shouted, "The chief escort of Changfeng Escort Agency, I discussed with your father 6 months ago that this road will draw 10.20 taels of water per escort trip. We will protect the safety of your 30-mile mountain road. I didn't expect that shortly after your father's death, you began to disobey the rules. Do you really think that with your 3-legged skills, you can ignore the rules of the Green Forest Road? If this gets out, how can we get along with Panyin Village on Green Forest Road? For the sake of your father's friendship with me, drop 100 taels of road money. I'll let you go over now." The chief escort gritted his teeth and said, "You've increased your price 10-fold. The total amount of this escort is less than 80 taels. The one-eyed leader snorted coldly, "If you don't leave any money, leave your life. This is the rule. Brothers, kill." Under the command of a group of escorts, the bodyguards of the escort agency formed a circular formation around the carriage, guarding the center and using the carriage as a cover, fighting hard. But both in terms of number and strength, they are not as good as these mountain bandits. There have been many casualties, and the situation is critical. Su Jingping stood not far away, unwilling to meddle in this business, and walked around to the side of the official road, preparing to leave. The bandit stared at him without saying a word, with a nervous and vigilant expression on his face, clearly noticing the unusual appearance of Su Jingfang during his martial arts practice. The chief bodyguard in the escort agency, Gao, commanded from the top of the carriage and saw more clearly than the bandit leader. He knew that Su Jingping was a master and was in a hurry to seek medical treatment. He shouted, "This great hero, in the face of difficulties in the martial arts world, please lend a helping hand. There must be a generous reward." Su Jingping didn't even look and left coldly, not getting involved in this world of right and wrong. For him, that benefit cannot offset the various causes and consequences that arise from meddling. Furthermore, this group of green forests has not been completely eradicated. It is the escort agency and their team who are willing to sacrifice their lives and wealth. Who is to blame? It is also a rule in the martial arts world for the escort agency to escort goods to various green forests and worship docks. If you want to not abide by this rule, you must show your strength. Just like Lin Yuantu, the ancestor of the Fuwei escort agency, who was able to fight invincible opponents in the green forest with his anti-evil sword technique, he naturally did not follow the rules. Those with strong strength are the rules. Suddenly, a woman's cold snort came from behind. Thank you for having such good internal strength, but you didn't save yourself when you were in danger. I think you're also with these mountain bandits. Then a female warrior dressed in white clothes and wearing a white robe on her shoulders, who was extremely coquettish, appeared from the side of the road. With her long sword unsheathed, she suddenly killed the mountain bandits. That woman has excellent martial arts, especially her lightness skills and swordsmanship, which are no longer passed down by famous masters and can be called divine teachings. Have you ever seen a swordsmanship where one sword can split into more than 30 sword shadows? The details of the virtual and real, time and space, speed, and angle in each sword technique are all hidden and profound. With a casual thrust, 4 or 5 people fell in front of each other, unable to even see where their sword was hit, which was truly shocking. Xu Jinping originally wanted to leave, but he was attracted by the woman's swordsmanship and couldn't help but watch carefully, hoping to learn something beneficial to his martial arts. He lacks too much in martial arts skills. That woman wandered around constantly, relying on her exquisite swordsmanship. In just a moment, she had already killed dozens of mountain bandits. Speaking of her heartfelt methods, she was truly ruthless. The bandits scattered one after another, and the leader also retreated in shock, but was kicked off the horse's back by the female hero and captured alive. The members of the escort agency were painfully beaten and chased, and then killed most of the fleeing bandits. Xu Jinping saw the end of the battle, and the female hero was surrounded by a group of people from the escort agency to celebrate, with various praises kept coming. Xu Jinping felt it was not very interesting, so he turned his head and left. The swordsmanship he had just learned still lingered in his mind. He suddenly realized that swordsmanship is indeed divine, with endless changes and few flaws, but the female hero's mastery is not profound, and her moves tend to be rigid. Xu Jinping still remembers that she killed several people in a row, using the same sword move and the same transformation. 2 of the bandits were killed and jumped over the wall. They wanted to die together, but almost injured the female hero. Fortunately, she used her excellent lightness skills to distance herself ahead of time. If she could exchange this move for some other changes, these 2 bandits wouldn't even have room to fight back. Xu Jinping recalled that scene, imitating the female hero and wielding a sword. With a flick of his wrist, the branches of the tree formed multiple sword shadows, which were other changes in the swordsmanship of that move. With just one sword strike, it cut off the branches of the roadside cedar tree. His martial arts comprehension is not low, and he has already understood the key points in swordsmanship from an observer's perspective. He also thought that this move seemed to be able to be incorporated into his own martial arts. So I pondered all the way until it was dark. There were many mountain roads in this area, which seemed to have taken a long time, but in fact, I only climbed a few mountains. Without leaving the village in front or the shop behind, I was fortunate to have encountered a dilapidated temple before nightfall, which prevented me from camping with the sky as my clothes and the ground as my bed. After Xu Jinping entered, he lit a bonfire and looked at the fallen Buddha statue. With a thought, he went up and lifted it up, carrying it back to its original lotus throne. This Buddha statue is made of cast iron and plated with copper, which is quite heavy, weighing about 400 to 500 pounds. But currently, Xu Jinping has not put in much effort, and using his internal skill cultivation to carry 1,000 pounds of the giant cauldron is also an easy task. After correcting the Buddha statue, Xu Jinping found another piece of cloth and began wiping the dust off the surface of the Buddha statue with the water from the well behind the temple. After finishing, he rearranged the incense burner, found 2 missing incense candles, and lit them again. Then sit in front of the Buddha, as in the past in the temple, and recite the scriptures in silence. The night sky outside is sparkling with stars, while the Buddha statue inside the temple is solemn and devout. Xu Jinping has been a monk for over a decade, and it is impossible to say that he has no faith in Buddhism. Because he was adopted by his master Feng since childhood and was well taken care of, he has been bowing to the Buddha since he remembered it, and worshipping the Buddha has almost become a habit. There is a small martial arts world in Shaolin Temple, but he does not hate Shaolin Temple as a sect, nor does he hate Buddhism. After all, he grew up here since childhood and can distinguish right from wrong. To hate is only human nature. Although Xu Jinping is not yet capable of killing people like a horse, he has been full of sins since he plotted to seize the star-absorbing Dharma. How could the Buddha bless such a wicked person like him? However, after reciting several Diamond Sutras, Xu Jinping felt much calmer, and the anger that had arisen from yesterday's murder had also subsided. What he worships is not actually Buddha, but himself. I am Buddha, and this is also what his master taught. If there is Buddha in the heart, then what one worships is Buddha. If there is demon in the heart, then what one worships is naturally demon. Buddha and demon are always one and two sides, inseparable. So when Xu Jinping worshipped the Buddha, he actually asked himself if he felt guilty for his actions. However, after reciting the scriptures, he realized that his true heart had never felt guilty or regretted it, so his mood remained calm and free from any worries. At this moment, he sat on the altar with a kind expression and eyes, but instead, he complimented the Buddha statue and was in perfect harmony. At this moment, the sound of carriages and people talking could be heard from outside. There's a dilapidated temple ahead, that's great. There's no need to camp out in the wilderness tonight. It seems like there's a firelight, someone came inside first. Be careful, I've encountered a wave of thieves today, and I'm afraid the night may be a bit rough. The chief bodyguard is always so cautious, But this time, with Miss Qin with us, no matter what thieves are inside him, since there is Miss Qin and her sword, there is nothing to be afraid of. A woman laughed, feeling very proud and carefree. Don't worry, everyone from Changfeng Escort Agency. We just need to stay inside and there's nothing to be afraid of. Xu Jinping opened his eyes and heard the voice very familiar. He immediately remembered that it was the white-clad female hero he met on the road this afternoon. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. The Woman of Sword God. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. The Woman of Sword God. The members of the escort agency and the female hero in white entered the temple and saw Xu Jinping sitting on a cushion. The chief escort was somewhat surprised and whispered, "How could this guy look so familiar?" The woman in white sneered and said, "Of course you look familiar. It's not the guy who refused to save his life today." The chief bodyguard, of course, had already recognized him, but he was resentful of Xu Jinping's refusal to save him when he saw his death. However, considering that he and others were no match for this person, he wanted to lure the woman in white to come out on his behalf. Oh! It turned out to be him. This master's kung fu is amazing. We all saw it in our eyes, and we were fortunate that he didn't help those mountain bandits. If that's the case, I'm afraid Miss Qin, if you take action, we won't be spared either. The escort on the side was very clear about the overall character of the lead escort, and upon hearing the string song, he immediately agreed, "Not bad, not bad." This master walks with a focus on practicing martial arts, and even holding a branch can break the wooden stakes and gravel next to the path with internal strength. His cultivation is profound. Xu Jinping faced the Buddha statue without saying a word, only watching them perform. All the attendants had already entered and immediately sat in all directions, but they faintly surrounded Xu Jinping in the middle. The woman in white heard the double reed play between the chief escort and the escort, but she lacked experience in the martial arts world and did not see that it was a mutual challenge. She had already developed a sense of dissatisfaction with Su Jingping in her heart. He only said, no matter how deep his cultivation is, what can he do? Walking in the martial arts world, he has strong martial arts skills but cannot be chivalrous and righteous. I think he is no different from those bandits in the martial arts world. As he spoke, he walked towards Su Jingping. The chief escort and the escort exchanged a glance and nodded with joy. He pretended to be worried and said, "Oh, Miss Qin, I see that I'm out of town now. I'll barely rest in the corner tonight. When I arrive in Yuhang County tomorrow, our Changfeng escort agency will definitely hold a banquet to entertain me. Since this barren mountain temple has been occupied by this leader first, there is no need to disturb him. He has profound martial arts skills, but Miss Qin should not show off her strength. In case she is defeated, she may harm herself." As he spoke, he squinted his eyes with the bodyguard beside him. The words sounded as if urging the woman in white not to meddle in her affairs, but in reality, their tone was harsh and insinuating, with a hidden intention of provoking. After hearing this, the woman in white became even more dissatisfied. She came to Su Zhang's side and said, "Wunatuchuo, with so many of us, we need a more spacious space. You can live in the corner next to us and start a new fire. Don't disturb my aunt's rest." Su Jingping said calmly, "That chief bodyguard was right just now. When you're out, it's better for the girl to do more than less." The woman in white became angry. She was already displeased with Su Jingping and was suspected by the chief bodyguard that her martial arts were not as good. She immediately kicked Su Jingping in the back, intending to teach him a lesson. Su Jingping's internal strength shook for 40 years, and the woman in white suddenly felt a kick on an iron plate, causing her to scream uncontrollably in pain. Upon seeing this, the chief bodyguard exclaimed in an exaggerated voice, "Miss Qin, are you not injured? This leader has profound internal skills. Even if his character is not good, we should not provoke him like this to avoid losses. This is equivalent to joking that a woman's strength is not good and she is being humiliated for nothing. The woman in white is a spoiled woman at home, and since becoming Xiaofeng's woman, she has been taught the divine sword by him, which is even more impressive. She believes that even if people in the martial arts world consider that person's face, they will never dare to make things difficult for themselves. In addition, the divine sword she learned was indeed exquisite, and she defeated many famous people. Her arrogance became even stronger, and she couldn't afford to lose. At the moment, her pretty face turned red and she drew out her sword, shouting, "Stinky head Tuo. You have deep internal skills, but I see if you can withstand my aunt's sword." As he spoke, he split the light with a sword and stabbed Su Jingping from behind, intending to take his life to shame him. Su Jingping frowned deeply as he looked at the Buddha statue and said to himself, "Buddha, I didn't want to be influenced by cause and effect to provoke right and wrong. Why does right and wrong always come to me voluntarily?" He maintained a cross-legged posture, but rose to a height of about 10 feet in the air. The pussy under him was ejected backwards, forcing the woman in white to wield her sword and cut open the pussy. Feeling the true energy attached to the putuan, the woman in white felt a slight numbness in her wrist and her heart trembled. Secret passage. This Tuo's internal skills are indeed much better than mine. If he encounters me hard, I will inevitably suffer losses. I need to make him wary so that I can use my swordsmanship to kill him here. When it reaches the martial arts world, I will slay another gang of bandits and villains, which will showcase my reputation. If Xie Lang hears about my reputation, he may come to see me again." Her eyes lit up and she said to Su Jingping, who looked at her face, "Thief head Tua, your martial arts are quite profound, but I have this divine sword passed down by the sword god Xiaofeng, and you can't stop it." Su Jingping's heart was indeed shaken. No wonder he felt that this woman's swordsmanship was like a divine gift, as it was passed down by Xiaofeng. It could indeed be called a divine gift. You, such an unreasonable person, can also obtain the true legend of Sword God. The woman in white proudly said, I am Xiaofeng's woman. You don't know how much he loved me when he abandoned the noble daughter of the Meizhuang family, Meizhuang Chuixue, and came to be with me. The chief escort of the Changfeng escort agency on the side also said, this is the second young lady of the Bibo Mountain Villa. The sword god has become famous at a young age and has been around the world. Before disappearing from the martial arts world, the last beautiful confidant is this Qin girl. Watching the woman in white raise her chin with a proud expression, Su Jingping couldn't help but laugh. There are many women in Xiaofeng, and it's hard to count them even with 10 fingers. When it comes to queuing, which one can you rank in? The goddess in white changed her expression and said, as long as I am famous in the martial arts world, Xia Lang will come to find me again. How can other lowly women compare with me then? Speaking, he thrust his sword again. The people of Changfeng escort agency sneered as they watched this scene. It seemed that they had successfully used a knife to kill someone. They believed that Su Jingping would be wary of Xiaofeng's name no matter what, but the swordsmanship of this woman in white is also very exquisite. As long as there is a confrontation, Su Jingping dare not harm anyone, sooner or later he will be killed by the woman in white. However, would Su Jingping really dare not touch a woman in white because of the boring title of Xiaofeng's woman? No one knows Xiaofeng's nature better than him. He is a person who is extremely good to friends and brothers, but extremely bad to women. Even if Meizhuang Chuixue, who was pregnant and gave birth to a child for him and had a noble status, said she would abandon him on her wedding night without any attachment, forcing Meizhuang Chuixue into a cruel and ruthless heavenly sovereign. Meizhuang Chuixue sent assassins to surround Xiaofeng many years later and questioned why he abandoned her back then. Xiaofeng only replied, I'm happy. Completely devoid of any guilt, cold to this point. Including the brothel woman Miao Xiaoli who saved his life, Xiaofeng did treat Miao Xiaoli very well. However, when his son wanted to marry Miao Xiaoli later, Xiaofeng was angry and stopped because brothel women were not worthy of his son, even if this woman had saved him. He is the swordsman among all the swordsmen in the ancient dragon martial arts, who has the least woman in his heart. So the woman in white in front of me really thinks that as a sword god, how much advantage will she have? Perhaps the only advantage she had was the swordsmanship that Xiaofeng casually passed down, but Su Jingping had already finished peeping at it in the afternoon. With this woman's foolish aptitude, the divine sword in hand cannot exert 30% of its power, making her stiff and stiff. These sword moves may still have a crushing effect against the third and last-rate disciples, but for Su Jingping, they are like a joke. During a few twists and turns, Su Jingping avoided most of the deadly moves and then took a stick of wood, using it as a sword and stabbing it with the backhand. The woman in white sneered upon seeing the situation, her sword shining in a circle, wielding a long and sharp sword that pierced Su Jingping's throat. However, Su Jingping, who seemed to be just 1 foot short of firewood, suddenly let go and shot straight. I used the divine sword technique used by the woman in white. This move is so ingenious that it pierces through the center of the white-clad woman's sword form, directly breaking it apart. The goddess in white looked horrified, and with her shallow cultivation, it was difficult for her to make any changes. She watched as the firewood poked into her chest and abdomen. The powerful internal force directly shattered her internal organs. She looked at Su Jingping with an incredulous expression, as if asking him, I am the woman of the sword god, how dare you kill me? The chief escort of Changfeng escort agency trembled all over and said, she is the woman of the sword god Xiaofeng. How dare you kill her? End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Buddha's Heart and Magic Intention. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Buddha's Heart and Magic Intention. Su Jingping tilted his eyes and looked at the other person. If it weren't for this person stirring up discord and intending to use a knife to kill, why should he kill this woman? He is not afraid of Xiaofeng, and Xiaofeng cannot seek revenge for a so-called beauty confidant. What Su Jingping is afraid of is the blue wave villa behind this woman. Although this force is not seen in various martial arts worlds, he has heard of the name of this villa. Lord Qin Wanhai is close friends with the Jiangnan hero Jiang Biehe, and their strength is on the same level as Jiang Biehe. At least for now, they are definitely not his opponents. But now that the person has already been killed, the only solution is to make things more beautiful and make it impossible for people to find out about themselves. Before the chief escort of Changfeng Escort Agency could react, Su Jingping picked up the sword of the woman in white and kicked it. However, at a distance of more than 10 steps, coupled with Su Jingping's sudden move without warning, the head of the total dart was immediately struck by the sword in the chest, retreated several steps, and was nailed to the wall, struggling for a moment before dying immediately. Such a person with 2 sides and 3 knives in the dark is the most despicable. Su Jingping had no intention of letting him go from the beginning. The people at the nearby escort agency were suddenly panicked, and Su Jingping resorted to violence and killed anyone he saw. He wants to silence everyone here and never leave any clues behind. The Changfeng Escort Agency had a fierce battle with the people of Panyin village before, but now there are only a few dozen people left, with many still injured. Unable to stop Su Jingping's ferocious outburst, he died more than half of the time in the blink of an eye, and blood even splattered onto the cleaned Buddha statue. The remaining riders quickly fled outward, wanting to ride a horse and escape. Su Jingping chased out of the window and shot a poisonous needle and hidden weapon at Kuai Ma. Kuai Ma was hit by a needle in the neck artery, and the poison gas immediately penetrated his bloodstream. These riders had just stepped onto the fast horse and were about to ride away. They had not taken 2 steps when they all stumbled and fell to the ground. In panic, Su Jingping had walked slowly, his face expressionless. The remaining 5 people all knew there was no hope of escaping and knelt down, crying and begging for mercy. He sought to silence himself, so as not to cause endless trouble in the future. His subordinates showed no mercy and cut off the 5 people with 1 knife and immediately fell to the ground. Then one by one, they stepped over each corpse, shaking their internal strength and breaking their heart meridians to ensure that no one faked death. Entering the temple again, I also repaired each corpse and checked the number of people. After confirming that no one had escaped, I felt a little relieved. At this moment, the sound of water dripping onto the ground came from outside the temple, and Su Jingping immediately grabbed his knife and rushed out. But I saw a horse with a person tied to its back, which was the captured leader of Panyin village. He witnessed the whole process of Su Jingping's murder and was so frightened that he couldn't help but urinate from his horse's back and was eventually discovered. Su Jingping would never leave a living mouth, so he picked up his knife and walked away. The other party shouted loudly, "Great Xia! Please spare your life. Our Panyin village is willing to serve you as the main leader. As long as you are willing to accept us, you will be the master of the nearby Green Forest Road." After listening, Su Jingping stopped. He was not interested in the overall handle, but knew about low-key development. But low-key development requires money. So he asked, "Do you want me to be your leader?" "Humph, how much does your Panyin village earn in a year?" The other party was moved by Su Jingping and quickly said, "The commercial development near Yuhang is relatively prosperous, and the caravans and escort agencies that come and go are familiar with us. Everyone follows the rules, and each team either pumps water based on the total price of the goods or pays 10 to 20 taels of silver at once. Over the course of a year, besides supporting the brothers in the village, there will also be about 3,000 taels of income. If you are willing to serve us as the village leader, all the silver I have accumulated before will be yours, Great Xia. Tell me, how many are there? It has been 4 years since I succeeded as the former village leader, and I have accumulated over 10,000 taels of silver. May I pay homage to you all?" Su Jingping thought to himself, more than 10,000 taels, indeed quite a lot. If we add those bandits from the mountain stronghold, then there will be even more. A thought rose from Su Jingping's heart, and he expressionlessly released the village leader. "Friend, what is your surname?" "I dare not, it's not expensive." My name is Peng Yunfei. Brother Peng, believe in what's going on here, you won't speak recklessly. Peng Yunfei smiled obsequiously and said, of course, since the great Xia is willing to be our leader, we can achieve mutual prosperity and loss. I don't want to cause trouble, so naturally I won't chew my tongue recklessly. Su Jingping nodded and led Peng Yunfei into the temple. Looking at the corpses scattered on the ground, Peng Yunfei's heart skipped a beat. However, Su Jingping brought a cloth and wiped the blood stained on the Buddha statue clean. The area around the lotus platform and incense burner was cleaned up clearly, and the central view of the temple suddenly became strange. The victims caused by the murder were scattered around the Buddha statue lotus platform, except for the Buddha statue, lotus platform, and incense burner, which were clean and neat, as if completely separated from the surrounding tragedy. Peng Yunfei stood at the door, not daring to say or ask, let alone escape, staring blankly at what Su Jingping's subordinates were doing. When he saw Su Jingping taking care of the Buddha statue, his face looked devout and peaceful, and he couldn't help but think strangely in his mind. Is this ferocious Buddha truly believing in Buddhism in his heart? Can he also believe in Buddhism? Can Buddha bless such people? After cleaning everything, Su Jingping found several incense candles and incense from the items escorted by the escort team, and inserted them into the incense burner. He even lit a circle of sandalwood incense and placed it in front of the lotus platform. Afterwards, like a monk who attained enlightenment, he stood in front of the Buddha statue with his hands clasped together and recited, Amitabha Buddha, my Buddha is merciful. Please forgive my disciples for creating new sins. The mistake has already been made, but it is not my wish. However, since the person is already dead and the grudges have been erased, please be merciful and transcend, and help all benefactors break free from the sea of suffering in the mortal world and ascend to the ultimate happiness. As he spoke, he began to recite the Sutra of Rebirth, and surprisingly, he began to transcend the people he had killed. Peng Yunfei's expression was indescribably strange. He could clearly see that the expression on Su Jingping's face was indeed compassionate and deep in pain, as if he was truly saddened by the deaths of these people, but these people were clearly killed by him. How could he do this? No, how did he do this? Is he pretending? It's not necessary. Who did he pretend to show it to? Am I a bandit like this? Do I care if he kills cruelly or not? Since that's not the case, it indicates that the compassion and deep pain in his heart at this moment are true. Peng Yunfei suddenly felt that Su Jingping was a bit schizophrenic. When killing, he was cruel and ruthless, afraid that people would not die. He even chased and repaired his sword, like a demon. But after killing someone, this kind of behavior is as contradictory as that of a great virtuous monk. After indulging everyone, Su Jingping walked out, his hair and beard integrated, and there was not much visible part of his entire face. But the indifference in his eyes was very clear, as if only in front of the Buddha statue could he regain some Buddha nature and become kind and kind. Even with the presence of Buddha, it does not prevent him from ruthlessly killing. Collect all the belongings of everyone in the escort agency, and there happens to be a horse. Let's go back to your village. Peng Yunfei quickly nodded and began to work. Su Jingping looked at him with indifferent eyes. Did his killing intent really fade away in his heart? Will he really let go of this Green Forest bandit leader, who has always been impeccable in his actions? End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Cleanliness. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Cleanliness. After Peng Yunfei finished packing up, he showed Su Jingping the results in his wallet. Altogether, there are about 300 taels of silver. Peng Yunfei spat and said, that son of a bitch from Changfeng escort agency. With so much money, he had already paid that 100 taels in the afternoon. There's no need to risk so many lives. Su Jingping disagrees with the principle that people die for wealth and birds die for food, which remains unchanged throughout history. He put away his wallet and instructed Peng Yunfei to lead the way to his bandit stronghold. This afternoon in the battle, a woman in white from Bibo Mountain Villa took action and killed the Panyin village in disarray, killing many of its core forces. The competition on the nearby Green Forest Road is also very fierce. Peng Yunfei convinced Xu Jinping to become their leader, on the one hand to save his life, and on the other hand, he also showed sincerity. If there were no strong ones to take control, their Panyin village would sooner or later be annexed by other green forests. At that time, this village leader would not be able to surrender as easily as others. The so-called master of the Green Forest Road is nonsense. There are many green forests in Jiangnan, and no one is convinced. Where did the master come from? The night rush was already inconvenient, and the two of them walked almost all night before finally arriving at Panyin village. At this time, there were only 30 to 40 people in the village, including cats and dogs. Today, there were heavy casualties in World War I, and many people were unable to return alive. After entering the mountain stronghold, Peng Yunfei didn't dare to tell the story of Xu Jinping's murder in front of his brothers. He only said that he had been saved by him and would become the leader of the Panyin stronghold in the future. The village leader has voluntarily given way, and other bandits naturally dare not have any objections. Under the leadership of Peng Yunfei, Xu Jinping met every person in the village and also recorded the total number of people. Then let Peng Yunfei take him to see where the gold and silver were stored. After looking at the boxes of treasures in the warehouse, Xu Jinping was almost dazzled by the dazzling jewels. He was greatly satisfied and in the evening, ordered everyone to gather and celebrate together. Peng Yunfei thought that Xu Jinping had taken office as a new official, but he didn't expect to burn 3 fires and deal with his confidants. Instead, he wanted to show kindness first, but he didn't dare to refuse. So they gathered everyone, slaughtered pigs and sheep, set up several tables, and sat together in the lobby of the bandit stronghold. Xu Jinping sat in a separate position at the top, scanning the crowd below. None of the bandits knew Xu Jinping, and he was somewhat reserved. Xu Jinping raised his glass and said, "From now on, hang out with me, drink big bowls of wine, eat big bites of meat. How many women do you want, how many women do you have? Let's together make Panyin village bigger and stronger, and make the surrounding Green Forest Road submit to us." To avoid being ignored, Peng Yunfei was the first to stand up and support the crowd, raising a glass to let everyone drink together and vow to follow the new village leader to the death. Pushing glasses and changing cups, after 3 rounds of drinking, everyone came to pay tribute to Xu Jinping, who also smiled and looked at them. Everyone only felt that today's drink was particularly intoxicating. After a few rounds, many people with excellent alcohol tolerance began to lie on the table. There are some who have good martial arts skills and can persist for a little longer, such as Peng Yunfei. Peng Yunfei's face turned red, and he stood up with a glass in hand. He remained a bit clear-headed, looking around. His rich experience in the martial arts world allowed him to discover the situation. He fell down his glass and pointed at Xu Jinping, his face twitching as he asked, "Master, why did you harm us?" A few bandits who could still persist next to him looked surprised and said, "Why did the second leader say that?" "Fool! I was drugged in wine." Everyone suddenly understood, but it was already too late. After Xu Jinping had confirmed that everyone in the village had arrived, the banquet began and the lobby door was closed. Most people are now unconscious, and only 4 or 5 can barely stand up, but it is no longer effective. Xu Jinping looked up at Peng Yunfei and said calmly, "I had no intention of keeping you alive from the beginning." Peng Yunfei said, "Why didn't you kill me at that time? You even listened to me and became the leader of my Panyin village." Xu Jinping put down his glass and said nonchalantly, "Because you told me that your Panyin village has money." Peng Yunfei sat down in a chair, feeling dejected and powerless. He chuckled bitterly and said, "It turns out it was for the sake of seeking wealth and killing people. This is what we often do in the Green Forest. Hee, I didn't expect to die and still can't understand. But you. Why do you still need to use methods such as sweating pills and so on when your martial arts are so high? For safety reasons, I cannot let anyone leave the Panyan village alive. If I use my martial arts skills to slaughter, although it is not difficult, it may not guarantee that you will not have any fish escaping the net. Su Jingping walked slowly down, ready to finish. Peng Yunfei saw him walk up to him with a cold and indifferent expression, as if death had descended upon him. However, at this moment, he had no fear at all. He suddenly remembered a series of actions taken by Su Jingping last night, after he had killed someone, and earnestly requested forgiveness from the Buddha. Can't help but ask, do you really believe in Buddhism? Su Jingping was stunned for a moment, and finally nodded seriously. I grew up in a temple since I was young, and believing in the Buddha has become my instinct. I am the most devout follower of the Buddha. Peng Yunfei couldn't help but sneer and say, just you. Do you think that Buddha will forgive you for doing so many evil things? Do you think that after you die, you can ascend to the extreme? Are you not afraid of falling into the 18 layers of hell and never being reborn? Su Jingping asked in reverse, do you think Buddha exists? I don't know if existence exists. As a bandit who kills people like this, I don't even believe in Buddhism. But believe it. That's why I asked you that. Are you really not afraid of retribution? Su Jingping patiently explained, I don't know if Buddha really exists, but my master taught me not to ask if Buddha really exists. Because what we worship is not the Buddha himself, but the Buddha in our own hearts, which is our own Buddha nature. The integration of Buddhism and demons, whether it's killing or saving people, does not conflict, it purely depends on whether it stems from the choice of the original intention. Killing you, killing them, is Su's original decision. If the Buddha in Su's heart doesn't feel wrong, then it's right. Peng Yunfei was stunned and said, so you really believe in Buddhism? Su Jingping used the same method as last night to kill every bandit in the lobby. He gave them a slow-acting aphrodisiac in the wine, so it was not noticed for a long time. Once the effect took effect, there was no room for improvement. Looking at the corpses in the hall, Su Jingping casually clapped his hands, saying that there was no need for transcendence as there was no worship of Buddha here. He collected the gold and silver from each person's bodies, took out the gold and silver from the warehouse, and found 2 coffins from the bandit stronghold. He poured all the gold and silver from the bandit stronghold into the coffins. This is over 14,000 taels, which can be said to be quite fat. He has never had so much money in his 2 lifetimes. In addition, Su Jingping also found several deed properties in Peng Yunfei's private house, which he secretly purchased as real estate, probably for the sake of future financial considerations. However, these are all cheaper for Su Jingping. Su Jingping will consider selling all of them and exchanging them for floating wealth. Having received a large sum of money, Su Jingping drove a carriage and placed the gold, silver, and jewelry of the 2 coffins on top of it. He rushed out with the carriage, and since there were no survivors in the bandit stronghold, naturally there was no clue of his own. At this point, his actions were considered clean and he would no longer be tracked by anyone. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Stability. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. Stability. Driving the carriage and hanging the mourning staff is like driving a funeral, and people on the road are afraid of not being able to avoid it. And not far ahead is Yuhang County, which is also the largest county town nearby. Although Changfeng Escort Agency is here, Su Jingping doesn't care at all. If the chief escort and a group of escorts die, the outcome of this small escort agency will be bankruptcy. He didn't drag the 2 coffins into the city so eye-catching, but instead found a place outside to bury them first. Then he brought over 1,000 taels of silver into the city and spent over 100 taels to buy a 3-in house in a relatively remote location. Normally, a 3-in and 3-out house would cost at least 200 taels or more. The reason why it's so cheap is because someone has died in the house. It's a vicious house. The yarn salesperson hasn't been able to sell it for 2 years. With Su Jingping, a notorious tycoon, taking over, it's incredibly joyful. Moreover, Xu Jinping hardly made a bargain, otherwise 50 taels would be enough to buy it. After cleaning the house, Xu Jinping took out the 2 coffins and hid them inside the house. Afterwards, I bought a few sets of luxurious clothes and a few sets of training clothes that were easy to practice, and stayed there like this. He plans to reside here for a period of time under the name of a foreign businessman to consolidate his martial arts skills. After all, it has absorbed the internal power of 8 monks and is still very superficial and of weak quality. The current state of internal skill is only enough to support him in penetrating the 6 meridians of the 12 meridians. If he wants to continue to penetrate more meridians and make the efficiency of internal skill more efficient, he needs to continuously solidify and purify them. The meridians are equivalent to the high-speed channels in the human body. Connecting the meridians is a process that makes the high-speed channels smoother and more spacious. The more spacious and smooth the meridians, the larger the amount of true qi that can be burst out in a short period of time. In actual combat, the explosive power of internal skills is naturally significant. With the same level of internal skill, the more meridians are connected, the stronger the explosive power, and the more advantageous it is. And internal skills are also divided into attributes and purity, just like whether you are running Wuling Hongguang or Dongfeng Dakar on the highway. A person with pure internal power is equivalent to running Dongfeng Dakar in their meridians, while a person with floating internal power is equivalent to running Wuling Hongguang. When the two collide, Wuling Hongguang will naturally be crushed into debris by Dongfeng Dakar. These are the reasons why Xu Jinping must refine his internal strength. In addition to internal skills, there are also techniques and lightness skills, and it is necessary to select 2 subjects for hard practice until reaching the realm of transformation, so as to be on par with first-class experts. And these obviously require sufficient resource support. Nowadays, Xu Jinping has a lot of money and resources will not be scarce in the short term. The most important thing now is to settle down. As an outsider, he lives in a small county town like Yuhang County, and there is only one person living in such a large house, which inevitably attracts attention. So, since I have already disguised myself as a businessman from another place to settle here, I might as well have the appearance of a businessman. Xu Jinping first hired several lonely elderly people as servants from the Meizhuang. An old widower helps as a gatekeeper, an old lady is responsible for cooking and washing clothes, and a deaf-mute is specifically responsible for sweeping and pruning the flowers, plants, and trees in the courtyard. There was also an old man, Xu Jinping, who looked like a destitute and elderly scholar who had been kicked out of the house. He simply invited him in and was responsible for managing daily affairs and household accounting, which could be considered a butler. In this way, although the servants were all elderly, they also had the appearance of a middle-class merchant's home. The reason why Xu Jinping uses such people is because the elderly have weak energy, are easy to control, and won't cause so much trouble, so they can worry less. Moreover, they have no relatives or connections, and living in the Meizhuang is also a mockery of having a full meal and being hired. At least they no longer have to worry about food and clothing, and they are grateful to Xu Jinping, which is more reassuring than young people with fluctuating minds. In addition, in order to be more like a businessman and also to ensure that the funds can have sustainable income, so as not to be idle, Xu Jinping obtained a weaving workshop for 2,000 taels of silver through inquiries from Yarn. He doesn't care if this weaving workshop can make a lot of money, as long as it has an average level of weaving, it is enough to maintain operation and the energy source continuously provides income. Until then, Xu Jinping finally settled down in Yuhang County. He entrusted the daily affairs, including the operation of the weaving workshop, to the butler for supervision. He only practiced martial arts diligently on a daily basis and only checked the account books at the end of each month. Xu Jinping has always been quiet and reticent, rarely saying a few words all day long. He has a beard on his face and a serious smile on his face, which makes him look very serious. The elderly in the house are very afraid of him, and they handle everything on their own and dare not approach Su Jinping. Su Jinping has also become quiet. Among all his martial arts, Arhat boxing has become proficient. After all, when he was competing in Shaolin Temple, he was in the top 7 with this fist technique. The opponents who can enter the top 10 have learned any one of the 70.2 unique skills. If Arhat is not proficient in this, he will not be able to make such achievements. Apart from his martial arts, Su Jinping is currently refining the 5 tigers chasing the wind blade. This swordsmanship is only 2 words different from the 5 tigers broken door blade, which is widely circulated in the martial arts world. However, the chasing wind blade is considered a mid-level martial art, while the broken door blade can only be considered a lower-level martial art. The characteristics of the 5 tigers chasing the wind blade are reflected in its strength, agility, and sharpness. However, due to its Buddhist sword technique, the accompanying sword is a non-cutting ring sword. Therefore, its moves are merciful, only subduing and not killing. Who is Su Jinping? How could it be possible to make the sword technique one has practiced become a bodhisattva sword technique? He has the ability to draw analogies, and furthermore, the fundamental purpose of any martial arts is to defeat opponents, so he only makes modifications in a few key areas of this knife technique. In his hand, the 5 tigers chasing the wind blade became a powerful and fierce killing technique. He first changed his weapon. Shaolin used a sword, which he replaced with a thick back and wide blade, 3 feet long, and weighing 5 pounds. Then, all the moves in the knife technique, which involved hitting and tapping with the back and side of the knife, were changed to the sharp chopping technique, which basically transformed from Buddhist martial arts to martial arts of killing Tao. At the same time, it also added the sword god's sword technique that was previously peeked at from the woman in white, only taking its meaning and not its form, which greatly increased the power of the sword technique. Su Jinping is now very proficient in every move of the knife technique. To specialize, it is necessary to turn every move and technique into instinct. There are a total of 30.7 moves in the knife technique, and as long as you refine each move 10,000 times, you can elevate the entire realm of the knife technique. Su Jinping wakes up at 10 o'clock every day, practices swordsmanship until 10 o'clock, then eats breakfast, takes a walk to recover his strength, and practices swordsmanship until the end of the hour. In such a morning, one can practice a move 2,000 times. Rest for an hour at noon, eat to nourish, and start exercising halfway through. He set up many appliances in the yard, such as stone locks weighing from 100 kilograms to 500 kilograms, movable wooden dummy, plum blossom piles, and dug a deep hole in the backyard. The stone lock exercises strength, the plum blossom pile exercises footwork, and the wooden dummy exercises reaction. As for the deep pit, it is by increasing its own load, and constantly jumping in and out to practice leg strength and lightness skills. There are also free sports, such as skipping rope and sprinting, which enhance overall explosive power and endurance. There are different training programs at different times, and they are conducted in a cross manner. They are practiced until after midnight, around 6 p.m., before starting dinner. In the evening, I will practice hidden weapons in the dark for another hour to exercise my eyesight and hearing. Afterwards, I will no longer continue my cultivation. Instead, I will soak my medicine in a medicine bath and arrange for a masseur to come and massage in the county to relieve the accumulation of qi and blood during daytime cultivation and repair hidden injuries to my body. Before going to bed, one will sit quietly in front of the Buddha statue in the lobby and meditate, operating the Dharma Heart Sutra to gather the essence and energy obtained from daily external practice into the governor vessel, in order to enhance internal strength. This step may seem the easiest, but it is actually the most difficult part of a day's cultivation. Due to the hard work during the day, the body is very tired. Once one sits quietly in the incense, it is easy for them to fall asleep. In this way, the achievements of daytime cultivation will be greatly reduced, only practice to the outside, and unable to enter from the outside. In the past, many martial monks in Shaolin Temple were prone to falling asleep at this time, resulting in extremely low cultivation efficiency. Their martial arts progress was gradually surpassed by those determined peers, and many were eliminated. It is obvious that Su Jingping belongs to the extremely determined minority. He operates the Dharma Heart Sutra, not only collecting the essence gathered during the day, but also gradually consolidating the internal energy absorbed by the 8 martial monks, eliminating the impurities and retaining the essence, becoming more pure. This practice lasted for a month, and Su Jingping felt that he had made significant progress. The advantage of practicing external skills being stronger than internal skills was that the progress was almost visible to the naked eye. So martial artists in the martial arts world, even if they know that internal skills are stronger than external skills, will not neglect to practice external skills diligently. At the end of the month, Su Jingping still remembered the income from the weaving workshop and asked Qin Bo for the account book. Qin Bo was the butler of the family. The manager of the weaving workshop submits the account book to Qin Bo for review every month to determine profits and losses. Su Jingping opened it and his eyebrows gradually furrowed as he looked towards Qin Bo. Qin Bo's heart trembled and he said, "Sir, regarding the issue with the accounts, I have approached you since mid-month, but you are obsessed with practicing martial arts and only said that a comprehensive review will be conducted at the end of the month, so I." Su Jingping nodded and said, "I'm not blaming you. I just want to know the reason for the loss so much." End of this chapter.